Hello, everybody. This is Chris, and this is my channel, Bar None 11970. Thank you for taking the time to check out this live video. And as usual, unbroadcast, and just decided to do it on the spur of the moment based on the news that has been out recently. And this shows that if you're patient and you do things for the right reasons, events can totally change what you think is just a normal, regular day. And here's a little report about the precious metals and how they've been surging to 2-year highs due to what happened in the UK. So I'm going to read a little bit of an article. This is courtesy of thebulliondesk.com. According to this report, and that was earlier today, gold surged to its highest level in more than 2 years. And listen to this, after the UK voted to leave the European Union, sending shockwaves across the market. This morning's news may have well been extremely volatile, as markets tend to be thin in the early hours. We would expect more volatility as Europe opens, but as it does, there is also likely to be more direction and damage limitation from politicians. What a surprise. And they go to say, the UK has voted to leave the EU, the European Union, after 43 years, the first country to leave since the EU's formation. Now, I'm not going to read the rest. If you want to check that out, please do. But currently, gold is up $61 at currently around $1,320. Silver's up roughly about 46 because silver is going to follow gold, just not as extreme. And platinum is up around $21. For some reason, palladium is down 17. But if you've been following my channel for a while, and there are plenty of people who have, now I don't talk about this stuff as much as I used to. I still have the same ideals as I did when I first started this. I've just reached different levels to the point where my priorities have shifted. But if you watch some of my old videos about gold and silver, what I tell people is it's not the end-all best solution in the universe. I mean, it's a step above the fiat currency, the basic fraud, and the debt notes that they give us, because these are tangible assets if you have them in the physical form. And I've always said you have to worry about long term and how any kind of event can all of a sudden just flip the switch going in the opposite direction. So you can have years of it either falling or being stagnant, and then it takes an event or two which could totally flip things around. And this is one of them. Now, this is just the beginning, in my opinion, with this. Because the UK leaving, and that actually surprises me. When they were talking about that vote, I didn't even talk about it because I didn't think it was serious. I didn't think they would leave. So I'm actually very surprised to hear that they voted to get out of the European Union. Now, what happens? You see that their stock market plunged. And what happens? They start going into gold. So this is going to be the beginning of the end of the euro. Now, obviously, it's not going to happen overnight. It could still take years, maybe even a decade. But this is going to send a message about how they trust the EU and how they trust the euro. And eventually, that's going to trickle down to the dollar, because all money is, or all currency, I should say, is pegged ultimately to the US dollar. So tangible assets are what people always go to in any type of crisis. Now, again, this isn't an end of the world scenario or anything like that, so I don't want people to think, oh my God, you got to rush out tomorrow. But as you could see how quickly things can turn around, because just imagine if yesterday you were thinking, oh, I'm going to buy myself some gold. Well, now you're going to have to pay even more currency to get it. And if this trend continues, because you know they're going to try and step in, it's like trying to hold back a broken dam. You could delay it, but if it's going to break, it's going to break. So I've been telling people for years, it's all about the long term. And that's where some of my haters and some of the doubters, they just don't get it. Because for some reason they think long term means a couple of weeks, or maybe a month or two, maybe a year. It could take 5 years, it could take 10 years. But if you watch how things are going, and we see that, governments throughout history are not exactly the most reputable and honest of people. And if you check the history of money, they all end up ultimately failing. Now, the way they can do it now is they've gotten all countries to go off any kind of gold standard for the first time in recorded history. So it's been able to delay it a lot longer than in the past, because countries would always be warring with each other instead of uniting on that front, at least as far as the bankers and the politicians are concerned, so they could put more money in their pocket for longer periods of time by using paper schemes and turning them into physical assets. That's why if you look at something like China, I wonder how many people know about this, that the country China is building cities. I mean, the size of like bigger than Los Angeles and Chicago and New York City that are completely empty. Now, some people, I mean, you're obviously never going to hear that on the news. You have to go searching for this. So Google China building empty cities, and they're still building them. Now, if you understand why they're doing that, you will see how you should follow countries and not what a couple of doubters might say because they just don't like somebody personally. Now, we know that China is one of our biggest debt holders in the United States of America Corporation. Now, if they had security in our currency, well, they would be saving it, wouldn't they? They would be putting it in their banks and saving it because that would suggest that it does hold value. They would think it has long-term capabilities and they would save them. But if you notice, they're building cities so quickly that people aren't even living in them. What they're saying is they're playing a game of hot potato, and the dollar is the hot potato. And they would rather, as soon as they get any money, quote unquote, instead of saving it, they're turning around and building physical assets as fast as they can. Because when the dollar collapses, and it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, they won't have to worry about being stuck with a bunch of paper that doesn't have value anymore. And if you don't think that can happen, I mean, look at the Weimar Republic back in Germany in World War I. Look at plenty of other currencies as examples of this happening, where you go from one day you're buying a loaf of bread with a couple of dollars, next thing you're spending wheelbarrows full to get the same thing. So China is basically telling you that the dollar is on a respirator, and instead of holding on to it, they want to get rid of it as fast as they can, and they're continually building. So same thing is going to happen with the euro, because all currencies are pegged to the US dollar. It's pegged with basically with oil and the petrodollar. If you're not familiar with the word petrodollar, I highly suggest you look that up. So for the first time in recorded history, they've been able to distribute inflation throughout the world. But because the world is not an infinite place, you can only do it for so long before the cracks start showing. And the fact that the UK has backed out of the European Union says a lot. And that's just the beginning. That's the first domino. And if you don't believe other dominoes are going to fall, well, you have that right. But don't say I didn't warn you. And that's not to be scary or create fear. If people would have listened years ago and got it when they were the dips and everything, well, if the price goes higher and higher, you're not worried about it because you already have it. And again, price doesn't matter, because if all of a sudden all the currencies collapse and people start hoarding their gold and silver and buying all the tangible assets they can, well, it doesn't matter what the price was back then, because if the dollar or the euro or any other currency becomes worthless or so devalued that you can't really buy anything with it, because as you see, they fool you by making you think prices are getting higher. Prices are not getting higher. It's the value of the currency is devaluing, so you need more of it to make the same purchase. And that's why gold, for example, it basically follows the trend of inflation. Because as inflation rises, the value of the gold is rising as well. It doesn't make you wealthier, it just keeps up with inflation. So the same thing you could have bought 10 years ago with that ounce of gold, you could buy today with that same ounce of gold. But you'd need more of the paper currency to buy it. And just look at, for example, if you go, let's start 1990. Let's say gold was around 300 an ounce in 1990. Just imagine all the things you could buy in 1990 with your dollars. Let's say you had $10,000 worth of gold in 1990 and $10,000 in 1990. And you put the $10,000 in the bank until today. Well, can you afford the same things that you could back in 1990 with that same $10,000? No. things are not more expensive. It's the value of the currency due to the excess amount of unlimited printing, because it's based on no protection. In other words, no gold backing. You lose value. But the gold was roughly around $300 an ounce, and now is at $1,300 an ounce. So it may seem like you got more money, but because of inflation and the quote unquote prices of things getting higher, you're just staying on par with it. So it's a protection, and that's what I've always stated it as. And that's what the majority, well, not majority, the minority of the people that say things about the daily or weekly or monthly or yearly prices of gold just don't understand. It's all about protection. And I've said numerous times that it only takes an event or two before things change. And this is one of them. This is not the last one. And it's, again, not the end of the world. So I'm not trying to make anybody think that. I don't believe in the fear porn garbage. But protecting yourself in advance of knowing a situation is smart. If you know you're on a ship that is sinking, but it's sinking very slowly to the point where most people don't pay attention, yeah, you might get a life preserver and put it on, a life jacket, and put it on maybe a couple of hours too early, or a day or two early, or a week or two early, and people might think, why is this crazy person wearing this life jacket? We're fine, we're on a boat. Well, if that boat ultimately ends up sinking, because once it hits a certain amount of water, it goes under, well, you're prepared. And I've always said, better to be 5 years too early than 5 seconds too late. So check out what's going on with the European Union. They're getting out of, the reason the market's crashing is they're saying that they don't trust the paper scam, and they're going into physical assets. Now, there will be plenty of people still investing in gold and silver as far as stocks are concerned. But there's an old saying, if you can't hold it in your hands, you don't own it. Because if you know anything about the paper market, they can exchange what you have for cash. They don't have to give you the physical assets. So if you say, oh, I have 1,000 ounces of paper gold, I'm going to turn it in for the 1,000 ounces of gold, they could say, oh, nope, sorry, we don't have any of that physical asset left. It's not available, but we'll give you the cash equivalent. Well, if there's a problem with the cash at the time, what good is that going to do you? So I'm not going to do this one very long. I actually have an interview that I'm doing in about another 15 minutes on another person's show. A radio show in California actually wants to do an interview with me. So I'm looking forward to that. I would post the link as soon as it's done. I just have to wait for them to send me a message. So I'm going to get going. I don't know what we're talking about. I don't want to know. I just want to have the interview and just go with the flow, because that's what I'm good at. So if I can actually post the link at some point, I will. But as far as this situation, pay attention to it. In the news media, they're not going to tell you exactly what you really need to know. They're just going to make a bunch of BS excuses to make you think, oh, everything's fine. And behind the scenes, you'll know what's going on when you pay attention. So check it out, research it, learn about what I was talking about China, and just don't ever feel bad about preparing for things. There's nothing wrong with that. Just do it for the right reasons. Notice I'm not panicking or scared or worried, because this is something I've been planning for years, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. So when you're prepared, you don't have to worry, and it's not scary. For those who wait until the last minute, well, that's on them. So thanks for watching. Let's hear your comments. I always love to respond to those when I get the chance. I always appreciate everybody who takes the time to listen to my videos. And if this is the first one, subscribe to the channel and check out a bunch of my videos. Hopefully you will learn something and just have an open mind. So thanks for watching. Leave your comments, and I hope you have a great day and a great weekend.